Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Data Dash. My name is Paul Sampson, coming to you live again as we have just started this up for Friday afternoon. So we're going to take a look at the market as we've been doing pretty much obviously every single day recently. And we got some exciting moves going on. We've got Bitcoin kind of, flirting around this $120,000, $119,000 area that kind of been looking to all week. And we've got some big things popping off in some of the altcoins. Obviously, not all of them. Zcash popped off 700+% just over the last month here. Basically, we've got BNB basically, taking us into new all-time highs, a price discovery mode, which I want to take a look at because if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that was like the first major altcoin that took us into new all-time highs back in 2021. Not that that's an end-all be-all type of comparison, but just might be interesting to take a look at today. So we're going to take a look at those two. Any of the requests that I can get to that you all put in the chat. Aside from that, we're just going to be, just kind of diving into a bunch of things and, kicking back with the conversation. So hope you're all doing well and finishing the week strong. And let's just jump right on into it. I'll let some more come into the stream here. If anybody just wants to throw me a little 1-2 in the chat, make sure that you guys can hear me okay before we continue. And we'll get started. All right. So chat is up. All right, just Maui, sorry. Looking for XCL, Exceller. Thoughts on PYR's chart. PYR, we'll try to take a look at that too, Jennifer. I assume everybody can hear me then with the questions rolling in. So yeah, let's take a look at Bitcoin. 1-2. I don't know why I said 1-2, but that worked out. But yeah, thanks. All right, let's go, everybody. Make sure to grab yourself a cup of coffee, whether it's hot or ice, because we're breaking it all down right now. I got the old pumpkin spice locked and loaded, baby. Koozie, so it doesn't sweat on the desk. All right, we're ready for today. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this is a little bit more clear for the screen. Looks pretty good on my end. So yeah, let's jump into it. So Bitcoin right now, literally getting a short term, just like daily time frame, right? For today, we got a little staircase up and elevator down, right? The old slow move to the upside there, get everybody nice and excited just to give it all right back, right? So all the gains from the last like just about 24 hours, it seems, when we came into this region. Now, all week long, I've been looking for the potential move here, right? And again, I even hesitated up here at the high just because I wanted to see how we were going to react. But we came up with a perfect sweep of the last week's high, which obviously put in a new all-time high for us at $126,000. When that occurred, you're looking for one thing only at that point, which is a move back to your weekly pivot, which is the average of last week. All right, I always say it's last week's average, this week's target. This week was, no stranger to that. And so we got the slow grind down to that region. And the bigger picture here now is what happens next, right? Because many are looking to the market as if it is topped and we've double topped or pulled, similar things like we've seen in the past, 2021. Many are looking at the October 6th date due to a post from like Reddit or something that the 4-year cycle is up. Obviously, the timing around the 4-year cycle does align with that. Even my own timing that I was looking for a major high to come in for Bitcoin was the week of the 29th of September, which obviously is within 7 days of October 6th. So it's got everybody kind of spooked here. I think everybody's really fearful that the high is in. And as always, I mean, I very well could. But to me, I still think we actually are setting up for a leg higher here, even if it's just to push, not even, let's see how much here. I'm really interested in this 130 to 135 window. So you're talking like 5% from the high, although it's about 10% from where we are now. So a 10% candle in Bitcoin these days is pretty beastly, right? That's a $12,000 move if we get it. And one of the few reasons that I'm looking at this, we'll kind of break it all down here. You'll see I just got super simple stuff pulled up here. Local 382, local gold pocket, and all that's pulled from is just our last low here at 108. This move straight up. A lot of times when we have these really strong moves, you don't always get a deep retrace to where many will be looking for. And that's a very, notable place to be paying attention for. It's not uncommon or unreasonable to think, oh, we'd pull back to the gold pocket. You'd make a new, a higher low and you continue up. But the 382 is genuinely a spot where when we get the strong impulse move, whether it's up or down, we don't usually only retrace to a shallower fib, and that 382 is usually it. And then you seek the continuation. So I already had my eyes on this region. It also lined up with our weekly average, like we were talking about from earlier. And then a couple other things, kind of had my attention right here. If we zoom out to our previous quarter, right? So our Q3 just closed off. Okay. And just like the dailies and the weeklies and all that good stuff, we always have new range data to look to. So in the beginning of this quarter, we have last quarter's range to work off of. It's usually just something to, literally just that. So something to work off of. And when we started off this quarter, we were trading off around this region, got back in the range of the last quarter. So it's really relevant for this quarter. And we look to run it to the upside. We did that. We got to break out to the, push up higher and potentially coming back to just back test the high. And the high also aligns right with that local 382. So similar to like any traditional pattern where you have the breakout and back test, essentially, right? You have the falling wedges or the head and shoulders or anything like that. It's just the same here. It's except we're just horizontally looking at these levels, and you'll get these breakouts and back tests, whether it's again to the upside or the downside. So that's a really big support level coming in right there at about 119,550. And I'll say that we did front run it yesterday. All right. So one thing I never love to see in the middle of a day is a low or a high put in. All right. So yesterday we put in this low, at the moment at least, and it was like 2 p.m. ish, if I'm recalling, 3 p.m. And that's almost to the end of the day. Like the trading day, of course, is 8 p.m. Eastern. So not that the market ever stops, but that's when we hit the reset button for the new day. And I'm always looking for us to sweep that low on the next day. Okay. So likely that we're coming down to do that, especially due to the fact that we front ran the 382. Okay. So you literally came dollars within. So you have to anticipate that that's what we're going to do. Also, again, yesterday, come down to that region. What happens? This little bounce happens. This little consolidation happens. So many people are entering new long positions because they just can't wait to see if we get this, or they don't want to, miss out. And that's usually the biggest piece. And even if we weren't going to get this move down here, and just assuming that it doesn't even bounce from here, it's one of those things that if that is someone like you, like if you're you wanted to get that 119.5, for example, and we front ran it by $200, and then you see it's up $1,000 or $2,000 later, and you're afraid that we're just going to consolidate and break out, you can always break down your position a little bit, right? To where if you're not going to enter anything unless we come down, you would just miss the move, right? So you might as well throw a little in with and I mean little, like just something to have some skin in the game in case we pump. But then have your main order still below, right? So it's like you have the best of both worlds. You have a little in there, so you don't have absolutely nothing in the game. And then, of course, if we do come down, overnight or the next day, then you can get your whole, your main position filled and stuff like that. So currently, I'm just talking about a short-term position. By the way, folks, I'm not advocating for anybody to go, all in on Bitcoin at $120,000 for a potential 10% move. So it just depends on your horizon here. I'm both, short-term, mid to long-term, trader, investor, all around, right? So I am looking for a short-term position. I actually took one here yesterday, and I did that exact same strategy. Basically, I didn't put my whole position that I want to, basically unload in this pot, but I didn't want to miss out on this move because we've been front running some levels just by, pennies, it seems. So I did enter a little bit here, and then I have the rest of it basically set up for 119.5 and even down to 118.9, right? So that's where I'm looking for the next little bounce here. And I do foresee this to be a region where we could get what's known as a short squeeze. Covered that a lot, right? Because again, everyone and their uncles are very convinced that this is the high of the market, which we've never seen in Bitcoin and crypto. This is probably the very first time that if that is the high, the entire market will have gotten it right, right? So it's something weird. In any other time in history, we've always seen people very euphoric and there are people, and again, it's not every single person is like, oh, the top is in type of deal. But I do see it more than not, right? So just something to be aware of. And when I bring that up, it's because when many people think one way, obviously the opposite occurs. It just may not occur instantly. So in this case, you do have some people that have been taking shorts and shorting the market, and they're feeling good right now. More than likely, not many people are going to take profits on a short on Bitcoin with a 4% move if they're thinking that the top is in and they're about to see an 80% drop. So the short squeeze potential is that, you come into these areas and people aggressively start shorting and shorting and shorting and adding, and then you get this huge rip to the upside, right? Take them all out. Now, that's still the idea at hand here. And we're coming down and taking that low right now. And now we're effectively meeting that 382 as we're watching live, right? So interested to see how we react here. Again, now this is our previous day low. So you're taking out everybody that got long yesterday, that got long in the middle, right? So myself, I got long literally at this exact low. So I have a decent stop loss. But most people that are trading, waiting until this region, getting a little FOMO, they're probably getting stopped out. That's 1.5%, which is generally what I even would go for. But my stop loss is, down in the 117 region. Again, short-term move here, folks. I'm not talking about, long-term buys where, you're closing your position over a 1.5% move. Woo! Just spit out some pumpkin spice. Got so excited. So yeah, anyways, that's kind of the Bitcoin outlook right now. Still anticipating a move up here. And of course, could be wrong at the end of the day, but for now, that's kind of the thesis. Nothing's really broken, even with this move here. I even stated yesterday in Discord too, when we were looking at this live, that most likely, or I was prepared for basically us to come and take that low the next day, right? And that's usually what I always will look for. It's a game of patience at that point, and it's also something that not always plays out. But more times than not, when you come into something like this, even if we did hit that key level yesterday at 2, 3, 4 p.m. Eastern, I'm still usually pretty weary that we'll come back down to the low again the next day, right? Because of course, again, you get everybody's awake at that point, at least for the most part of the world, right? And 4 p.m. Eastern is, going back to all the way up to like 6 a.m. basically for everybody else, right? So most people are viewing that market at that point, and you'll have a few hours where, again, everybody enters, stop loss below the low, blah, blah, blah. So everybody just got stopped out for the most part that entered here yesterday. And we'll see how we go here. I did want to talk about some other things, like some of the altcoins, right? So we're blowing right through for now. We'll see. Zcash, as an example, had a monster run, right? So like 700% in just a few weeks, and very similar to what we saw with XRP just last year in January, November, I believe. So we'll take a look at that. We'll come back to Bitcoin here in a minute. Let's let this candle close here in a bit. But we are in the realm here. See what ETH looks like. So ETH, I just have the overall last week range here. We did the same thing here on ETH on Monday. Basically, come up, you take the high, right? Take the high and die is usually what I allude to there. Ran last week's range, getting out of it here. So ETH may actually come all the way back down and take out last week's low here, which is always an interesting one for a Friday. That's the other thing too, is Fridays. For some reason, it's someone in the group pointed out, like Friday and Sunday seem to be like the biggest days in the market these days, and which kind of suck because I hate to take new positions or look at things from Friday's aspect, right? Because you almost always run the weekend, and then Monday kind of comes back and whipsaws you around a little bit. So it's always a hard day to kind of look to it all. Let's see here. Looks like she's coming down, baby. So the thing when even just like watching this live, right, is like we could very well, it's on the hourly time frame right now. You punch through these regions for a hot minute, and then you slowly creep back up. You can hold it there. So it's what I'm looking for at the moment. Otherwise, if she goes through it, then we'll have to kind of gauge the section here. There we go. 119.2 hitting. All right. Let's take a look at Solana too, where she's at. Solana has a really big setup that's still pretty well in play. Covered it a lot. I just wanted to take a peek. As long as we're above 196, honestly, still looking for some higher side. I think somebody last week had asked to take a look at it right there. I did a video where we were looking at Solana and Chainlink and XRP at the same time. Big time correction coming. Could be. Okay. Thoughts on XRP? So I literally did a video. It's like 10 minutes long. I don't want to take too much of today's live stream on just those three. It's Chainlink, Solana, and XRP. Anything I said there, I still kind of hold that. So if you want to take a look at that video, it's like 2 days ago. Let's see here. by no means is this something to get into now, but I just wanted to just kind of appreciate something of this nation, of this nature here, right? So Zcash, which has been, I think, a 2017 time frame. 2019 is at least on this chart on Binance, but it's been around for a while and had some pretty big upside in the last bull run, right? So 2021 got to its all-time high, $375. And then ever since, just kind of completely melted to the floor. And you see this, just dead looking consolidation on a lot of coins, and many may not ever come back from it, right? So it's not that everything has, when you have this setup, it's like, oh, great, just get into it. It'll likely one day pop 10x or something. But these are the setups that where, like, if you are ever diversifying a little bit, like I like to look across the board and find, obviously we'll look for something that's got momentum, and we'll look for some decent entries on that. We'll look for the big, names, of course, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, that will be mainstays, obviously, for the longevity. But then I like to find some things that could 5 or 10x or could go to zero, right? And that's just the risk we take. I know that sounds crazy, but that just is the risk we take in crypto at any point anyways. And this is like that mindset is not, tacked on. I'm already seeing Bitcoin bounce back up to like almost 120 now. So the idea there is like not looking at like all low cap gems. Like Zcash by no means is a low cap. There's a couple others that I've pointed out over the last few really years. It's like Gala Games and stuff like that, like things that could be dead at them, at this time. And it's not where I'd put my whole portfolio into, but if I'm going to take any kind of thing into a little bit more risky, kind of portfolio, like side of things, I look for things like that, I guess, is like the long story short, right? Something that's like available on Coinbase and things that are available to everybody, essentially, not something that you have to go and get like a exclusive wallet for and all this, even though of course those have some, big upside potential. Granted, most people don't make anything, but Zcash is just did it just that. Like, I'm not sure what the news was, if there was anything around it, but a lot of times it's just you get these huge moves like that, and then you just get this big expansion out of it. So really, really cool to see. This was literally September 5th when we were trading at $37, and it popped all the way up to 280. So big move. Again, not something I'd chase by any means, just something to appreciate in the sense of like we can see things like this very fast all the time. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. Litecoin was another one. Let's take a look at Litecoin because it's been on the move as well. If I find it, PYR, somebody asked about too. So PYR, I think it was PYR. Let me double check. Crow, okay. Litecoin pumping means big correction coming. It could. Usually XRP pumping is the big correction. Like that's usually the last one, but you may be right. Did someone ask for PYR? I don't want to waste too much time if nobody did. PRY. Okay, so that's not the right one. But yeah, this is actually a higher risk one. This is a gaming token, pretty flat, potential bullish setup here with a nice move. Again, this is not something I put a bunch of size into, but it's got potential to, hit a really big, potential 5x move, right? I know that sounds like a little over what do you want to call it? Like little too promising, but that is the setup is here, right? So it's pretty much flatlined. The kind of the small term, more like things that you'd look for more confirmation would be like if you flipped 118, we're currently at 92 cents. So that would be something to look to. And then, like I said, potential for this, but the way that I play stuff like this is that I don't put huge size in any of these. This is like, I always call them beer money trades, where it's like, whatever that means to you. If you had like literally the amount of money that you could just throw away, $500, $200, 100, 1,000, whatever it is that you could live without. But if it flips 5x, then, you're in a good spot. You take that, put it in the cash, wait for a red day, put that, 5x into something that you actually have some conviction in, you want to see for the long term, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Solana, whatever it may be. But that does have that. Let's see where Litecoin is sitting. I thought I had it on here. We'll take a look at Crow. Crow was another one, not 700% by any means, but a nice 400% pop. pretty much the exact same setup as XRP as we were coming into it, just putting up these really big areas of higher highs and higher lows, but basically consolidating for a long time. Little range area here. And then for me, I always look for a big move back to the 3.8, the macro 382s are usually where I target up to. For some of these, just like if things could just explode out of nowhere, what would a big area to look for be? And a lot of times it's these 382s. And even if it goes further, I mean, I still look for that. I'm happy if I get out at that region, right? And you're looking at 300%, you know, that ran up. It front ran it here just a little bit. I think this was 40 cents and this was 38. So came back down. I think it's down 50% right now from the high. So that's depends on how you want to look at things, right? So you're from the region we were trading in just in June, you're still up about 120%, but from the high that it put in, we're down over 50 now. All right. So something to keep in mind is just how, you know, your entry, I guess, is what matters. So if you have entered in the low term here, obviously you're still not in terrible shape. Could very well still be putting in a higher high, higher low scenario. All right. And then from there, you look for any upside. So for me, I still do see a world where Crow pushes up into some of these regions in the more, somebody asked for like the mid to, you know, more local time here. Let's just see where some just simple fibs are. We're right at the gold pocket right now. But yeah, I could see us coming down a little bit more here, but overall, just kind of, you know, at main support here, you're down 50-60% right here. Without looking at things in a leverage perspective, I don't ever look at the altcoins in a like a leverage play at all. These are always, I'm looking for just spot buy and hold, things that I can hold on to for at least a few months, if not a few, you know, potentially years, depending on what the horizon is. I'm not really in that camp anymore as we're coming into a big time frame in history. But yeah, it's one of those times where, you know, this is something that's pumped really hard and it's still up technically 122%. Could totally give all this back up is the issue at hand right now. So coming into the gold pocket, I mean, there's legs here to see this, you know, hold to some degree. Would this be the first thing I jump into right now? Probably not. And that's just me, just on a risk management scale, right? So if I had to have some Crow, this is definitely the area I'd look for it to come down to from that high. So I mean, you're there. The time around you is a little scary because, you know, Bitcoin's pulling back and the market's kind of cooling off here. So it really comes down to what you want to do here, because we could definitely come all the way back into this range again, right? So it's a tricky one. It's hard after you get these really big pumps, right? Because these, like I said, a lot of times, I mean, you see it right here. You've gotten this huge pump and you pretty much give it all back. You got this huge pump and you give it all right back. You get a huge pump and you give it all right back. What's to say this one's no different? And we come back again for this, you know, even if it's coming back all the way to 10 cents and currently it's at 18, it's like another 50% hit. So it's a tough one to get into after they have these really, really big moves. But that's how I'd be gauging it. So if I'm looking to get in fresh, maybe I'm looking around these areas, but otherwise Crow might not be the one that I'd look at right this moment. All right. Bitcoin's melting through. Let's see how she's doing. Coming right through that region. See if we hold anything here. Go to ETH. All right, ETH now came down to your previous week low. Epic move on ETH here, right? Unfortunately, to the downside, about 20% again, 15. We've seen a lot of like 15 to 20% moves here on Ethereum, right? Granted, we've seen big moves to the upside. But this is a really good example of just, you know, one of the things I look for every week. So on a Friday, again, it's weird to see, not weird. It's just usually we get, if we're going to get any kind of crazy moves, we usually get it by Wednesday and Thursday. Wednesday, usually we always are paired up with like an FOMC meeting, or usually there's jobs data or CPI or PPI by Thursday. So it always feels like by Thursday, you kind of get those big moves of the week out of the way. And yeah, so Friday's an interesting one to come down, but lo and behold, took Monday's high right here, and then just, like I said, take the high and die, previous week low. So without getting, you know, too into like fear or anything like that, just on a technical setup of this, where the market is designed to take the most amount of people from the, you know, most amount of money from the most amount of people most of the time. Again, going into a leverage style outlook here. People will highly leverage Ethereum, Bitcoin, especially a lot of the bigger projects here. And the same thing, right? For anybody that's holding long term is not probably getting stopped out of their long term positions at 4,000 whatever dollars. But anybody that took any type of leverage positions now for the last week that took them fresh, move stop losses up, what have you, they have now just all gotten stopped out. And it's one of those things where it's hard to swing trade sometimes these assets if you don't get super ideal entries, because the longer you're in a leverage position, you had really great upside here, amazing, but the longer you're in, you're almost always asking for the round trip, just short term. So it's just something also to like always be aware of. As much as I actually leverage trade, which is again just the only reason for leverage to me is so that I don't have to expose X amount of capital to a exchange that I can't control, right? So if I wanted to trade $25,000 on crypto and I want to use Blowfin or any of these exchanges, like at the end of the day, as much as I haven't had an issue or anything like that, they don't have KYC, they don't have really, if they lose your money, or if they go down or anything like that, it is what it is, that your money's gone. So I don't love to expose major capital to exchanges like that. So I utilize leverage so that I could put, instead of 25,000, I just put 5,000 there, and I can put, whatever amount of leverage that gets us up there, 5x leverage, for example. And that's how you should utilize it, right? Is as a tool to just use the same amount of capital that you would. But most people do the opposite. They're going to take $1,000 and they're going to put 20x on something because they want to make, 5 times their $1,000. They don't view that as making, X amount of $50,000, $20,000. And that's the way you should break it down. But most people don't utilize it like that. And then they just hold for forever. Everybody's always, overly anticipating that we're just going to continually go up or down. And you need to have a little strategy of like taking profits 50% at major areas and letting the rest ride. Like you might not get the entire, and even if the whole move plays out like you expected, you just protected yourself. You sleep easy. I do that all the time. I actually took a position on ETH. I'm pretty sure it was around 3,900, right? And we rode it up, and around this region, not even at the high, I took 50% out. I'd like to say around here. I can't remember off the top of my head. So 50% was out. And then even if it comes back and stops me out now, it's, hey, 50% trade. Yes, I could have captured everything all up right here, but it's fine. It was a winning move. There's going to be another one. That's how I do this, right? So that I'm not losing sleep over anything at this point. And then, of course, it's, between Bitcoin and ETH, I'm looking at 2 positions usually within the month minimum if I'm not holding something differently. That was just a random rant on some leverage, but we don't have to get too much into that. All right, let's look at what else. Do I think we should sweep the low at 38? This is a good hit right here. I'm going to see how this kind of forms up right now, and all's going to depend on Bitcoin, but that's a pretty good. The only problem, this is actually another really good example actually. So it's Friday. Context is everything, and in the sense of this move right now, we started off the week. So we started off the week earlier, obviously Monday's here, and this was our high from last week. So my setup that I'm always looking for is I'm looking for last week's range. Okay, here we are before we come through it. And just like we were looking at Bitcoin at the beginning of this episode, where I was showcasing how last quarter, the Q3 range is very relevant for this quarter, Q4. Well, last week's range of anything is very relevant for this week, and it gives us something to work off of. And what I mean by that is when we started off on Monday, you can always look for this move here. If you're trading at the high, you're going to look to sweep the high and die, is what I always say. And then if you're trading at the low to start off, like maybe we were trading down in this region or at the previous week low specifically, you look for a sweep the low and go. All right, but the key is here is that now we've taken the high and come down to the low. So now it's not as viable that we're going to come back up right away, right? So now we kind of have to let the dust settle. And it's also Friday. And now we're setting up for, if we come down a little lower at this point or whatever the case is, next week on Monday when we start up, we're going to have a new weekly low that likely, if we just kind of hang around this region for the weekend, we'll get a little pop, and then we'll look for the sweep then on Monday, and then you take it off. Because again, now we're in a whole new game where people are going to look to enter this market today, especially if we get a bounce. And yeah, it's just the same thing that we were just looking at with Bitcoin, right? Where everybody probably got in a little aggressively yesterday, and then today you come all the way back down to the low again, and it's just that game of just liquidity sweeping just constantly. So at the moment, I'm just gonna let the dust settle here, right? So this is what I'd like to see had we not already taken the high. Also, though, last week's range is losing its luster by Friday, right? So again, today's Friday. We've ran through the entire range of last week. We've taken out both the high and the low. We've hit the POC. We've hit the weekly pivot. There's nothing left for this week that gives us a short-term edge right here, aside from just coming down and sweeping some lows. So that's how I'd view it right now, right? So nothing too crazy. And then let's just see what the current week is shaping up to look like. So current week point of control is going to be back up here at 4,500. So next week, likely to come up and probably hit that. Our new weekly pivot is going to be up at 4,300. So give or take, depending on where we close, obviously. So yeah, still got 2 days before the week closes, of course, but that's how I'd start like breaking it down as we go into it. So yeah, interesting. Let's see how Bitcoin's doing. Still just kind of hugging the box. So we got down to 118.5 is our lowest. So something to go into the weekend with, right? So if say this stream ends, what we'd want to see is Bitcoin simply just getting above 119.5 at this point. Closing 30-minute candles to start. It's usually what I look for on a short-term base, but then 4 hours, and if we close the day above that, that's a good sign. At that point, I would imagine that that's probably where we get a little bounce out of, and we run it back. So we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, if we do start to come through here, it is what it is. Things change, right? Gold pocket below us is there, but until we really start breaking out of this region, is not necessarily overly on my radar. But we've got the monthly pivot for October sitting at 113. So just as we have the last week's average, this week's target, we have last month's average, this month's target, right, to be aware of. And that's down at 113. So I don't have it pulled up here. So that would be what I'd look for next. And that's just what, the looking at the charts is all about, obviously, right? So and everybody's always going to say like, oh, you say it could go up, it could go down. And it's like, well, we have to literally go along with what we're doing here. But when you have a plan and you are prepared ahead of time, I know that like, if I'm looking to get a new position, if we go through this region with, certainty, meaning we start closing hourlies and all that stuff below here, I'm not interested again until probably 113. So that stops you from trying to constantly catch a knife all the way down. Even from when we swept this high, there was only 2 areas I was looking for, this one and then 113. Even said it on Monday's video this week, right? So it's just how it is, right? We have to adapt to the market. But I've seen things like this time and time again where, even though we've overshot the exact area I was looking, right? It's not always exact. We could very well get through here, right? People are probably getting pretty bearish and afraid. You got ETH sweeping the low. I mean, it is a good setup. It's just for me personally, if I'm like going to just throw out my true blue, the way I would look at this and the risk management profiles, that I would wait for the dust to settle technically. But yeah, it's another setup where it's like, all right, we just took the lows again. I still anticipate the bigger picture to me is I still anticipate higher. So what does that mean? If I'm not in anything or if I'm looking for anything, am I looking to buy? I'm not looking to buy spot here, right? That's the big picture for me. But I'm also in Ethereum from so low that the way I manage my Ethereum position is going to be so different from anybody that is buying today, of course. I think Ethereum has the potential here to run up to 5,000, 6,000 in the next few really potentially weeks. But, the risk at hand here is that if it doesn't, of course, I wouldn't come in heavily at a $4,000 Ethereum, right? That's just the risk that we all have to take because nobody knows where the market is going to go. All we can do is try to position ourselves the best we can to make money and to obviously it's not even always about making the most money. It's just protecting your capital to some degree, right? So, yeah. So anyways, living this out live. If I'm being like super honest, it's not the best like setup at hand, but we did just take the low. My big thing is I always like to correlate how Bitcoin is reacting, right? So for me, if Bitcoin flips this 19.5, I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable with looking at the rest of the market, probably heading up too, right? So, but at the moment, what are we doing? We're below it now. Okay, got this little wick so far. We're rejecting off that 382, so not the best look here locally. So we're going to give it some time and see how we do here. Was there tariff news today? That's awesome. I don't know if there was or not. That's what Mishka just mentioned. All right. Absolutely. Someone just said thanks for the live stream. So, someone just said, why don't I consider the 0.5? You could. I mean, it's, to me, in this setup, I just if we start living heavily below here, I just don't think that at that point, I just start targeting the monthly pivot, right? So, and that even goes back to, let's just look at what Bitcoin's last week ran. So we just looked at ETH where we ran last week's range. Bitcoin's last week's range, we got pretty far away from it for a minute, but now we are well back within it, and it goes all the way down to that 114. Like even this gold pocket, I'm not really overly in love with. I'd say if we start, living below where we're at right now, it's probably going to go to 113. And then again, I don't have it on here for some reason, but the monthly pivot, the average of last month, likely to get hit this month, sits at 113. And that's just the bottom of the range. And even just looking at this now, where we just come back tested it this morning. So not anything to get overly concerned about quite yet, but that's a move, right? That's on the radar. Why is everyone so sure short-term correction when we are at the end of the cycle? This happens every time. It's just a dip. Buy it. No. So this Jimbo is asking, why is everyone so sure that we're only getting a short-term dip? For me, I fully anticipate that the market is hitting a high soon, within this realm. But short term, I just think there's a recipe to combat that statement. I think there's way more people currently that think that the market has absolutely topped. That's all I see, at least. And I don't look a lot across a lot of social media, so maybe I'm a bad gauge. I don't tend to watch really anybody, but just a few pieces I've seen, and even on the news, right? It's like that the 4-year cycle is hit, and that silly October 6th thing, started going around. Not too silly, honestly. The October 6th thing has legs because, of course, it was exactly the same amount. Like if you're looking at a 4-year cycle, and if you're, in belief of that, then I guess technically that, it's just what you're going to go off of. Me, on the other hand, I'm looking at this again as very strong move up, 382 areas where I want to see us kind of hold. Obviously, we wick through it for now, but that doesn't mean we can't literally still hold it here. And for this, we generally see a continued move up. Okay. 130 has been my main target for this entire bull run, I guess, for a long time. And but if that doesn't come through, then it is what it is, right? When we got to 126, so $4,000 off, something at least that I've been targeting for years. And I'll even go take a look at that really quickly. But to be fair, I mean, we're at the zone where it's very, very valid that we are in that end zone. Okay. So it's definitely more riskier here. Again, why I'm not advocating for anybody to go purchase one, like buy and hold, like this is the time to, go all in by any means. Short-term positions, of course, that's what I'm looking for here. I'm not adding any new spot holds to anything. I've got everything set already. If we blow, we go. And if we don't, then I guess it is what it is for the altcoins and stuff like that. But the overall setup that I did, pictured here since at least 2022, 2023 area was this setup here with gold pocket time coming in last September. That usually leads into the last leg of the market with the 1-to-1, which is And all that really is one of two things. It's the symmetrical completion of this setup, but it's also basically the exact time that we took from the 2018 low to the 2021 high projected off of that low. So in theory, that would line up perfectly with someone that's just measuring days, right? Where they're like, how long did it take from the low to the high? And then if you say, how long would it take from this low to this high? That's why it's lining up with that October 6th. So it's got some legs there. So this is definitely a time area where a pivot in the market is likely to come in, just like this was a pivot in the market where we got, a move to the upside here. Just for me, and one of the targets was hit. So the target area was this 122 to 140. It's like 143. I don't know why it came down a little bit, but so we've hit our head on there well before and even a little bit after. And so we're holding there for now. So I'm just looking to see if we get another move up more locally. I think that we have the setup there again, just a little local short squeeze. I think at that point, a lot of people would target like 150 and all that. I'm really only looking at the 130 to 135 area. And then, to look for this to start coming more so down towards the 80s, 90s. I fully anticipate us to go under 100K by the end of the year. But the next few weeks, like I always get this question because it's always kind of confusing, right? Where it's like, oh, if you say Bitcoin's about to crash, should I get out of all my altcoins and all this? At any moment, you do whatever's best for you, right? Like nothing I say should be something that you're going to, manage your portfolio. And I'm just presenting you with information and how I'm attacking the market. And that's for you to decide. Again, you're going to manage yourself way differently than me in the sense that I'm in this market from years now, right? And maybe you are too, right? And but if you're not, if you're just coming in, or if you just bought 2024 March when everything was popping and all these things, like again, you're gonna there's not one right way to do this market, right? To do any market, because everybody's in at different levels, and that's really the best way to say it. But the overall thesis here is that we're coming to a high, whether it's in already or we push up a little bit more, which is my current bias. And from here, if the next sizable correction on Bitcoin is likely to come from this 130, I've always stated 130 to 140 area, and a keyword there, area. So we've come up to 126. I mean, that's within realm of 130. So I am in agreement that we are likely due for a sizable correction, 30, 40%, what have you. It's just these last few weeks that we all know can go, very squirrely around before we actually get that rollover. Paul's ignoring my messages. I don't see which one you're sending here, friend. Always use a stop loss. Yes. Oh, Trump put something on social for the tariffs, I assume. Paul, do you think in the case of market cycle top like this, how it is possible to go to bear market for altcoins? I mean, they already seem they are in bear market. So my theory on the market is this, and I don't see us, and not because it's like, oh, just going to be a contrarian and like whatever, like my overall like tracking of the market, like high time frame analysis for the last 9 years basically has been backed by the 20-year housing market cycle. You could pair that and say it is the economic cycle, the business cycle. And even though I say housing, it's the stock market cycle and now crypto. I think that crypto is putting in its first 20-year cycle along the housing market. And when I say housing market, again, just the everything market. And things like this, even like this setup is only got, I say only, one of the major targets here is like $74,000. So I think that the tariff low is something that we come back down to ish for Bitcoin, right? And in between there and like 90-ish thousand, that's like the realm. But I think it's gonna be slow, just like we've seen over and over again recently, right? As Bitcoin's growing and evolving as an asset, it's not getting these, I mean, granted, we haven't seen a new bear market like we've seen in the past. So, I mean, maybe we get it like that. But I just don't foresee, because I'm anticipating the overall markets to really be topping out, whether it's now between 2026 to 2029, that next like Great Depression style hit. This is all answering the, how do you manage the altcoins and stuff? The altcoins have been a huge risk for the last few years, right? And reason being is that there's so many of them. I think we are very well on par to like hit a point where something happens, and I still think it's a few years away right now, but it's like I've been 90% Ethereum this entire ride since like 2022. And as far as altcoin positions go, because I anticipate all of them to go to zero. I think that all the altcoins are going to get wiped at some point. And I say all, like the majority, right? Like something like the .com bubble where there was millions of all these website companies and now there's 7 or 5 or whatever, right? In the future, I think that that's what we're up against. And so when, we're looking at these altcoins and thinking like, oh, they can, how can they go any lower? I mean, they're a lot of them are just vaporware, my friend. Like it's just nothing is truly out there. Like there's definitely setups and they can pump and they can whatever, but like at the end of the day, a lot of these altcoins are a huge risk in my opinion, especially now that there's just so many. And yeah, there's just not enough capital to go around to them. Obviously, a lot of the capital is coming in. I think there will be rotations that come out. I think that there's still a big and when I say this all, I still anticipate a really big move out of the altcoins. It's just you got to be really protective right now, and really in everything, right? So, hope that answers that question. I know it kind of got a little out of pocket there, but yeah, and just because I say I'm 90% ETH, I still take positions in altcoins, right? I'm still, looking, I'm buying and holding certain ones. Anything that doesn't have an ETF stamp behind it is usually my thesis of like, those are maybe the ones that'll make it, right? But I don't know. Nobody knows, of course. But yeah, so that's kind of how I'm approaching it. Again, that's just me. Do with that what you will. But yeah, unfortunately, the altcoins can always take a hit, man. And it's just the risk. Like I said, we play. Watching Bitcoin grow the way that it has, and looking at like how now the governments and everybody has purchased, and just I think that the entire way, everybody got in the beginning when I started trading specifically, it was 2017. You could only trade against Bitcoin. We didn't even have dollar pairs, USD or nothing, right? And the goal was always trade altcoins to build your Bitcoin. Just get more Bitcoin, get more Bitcoin. That slowly went away because Bitcoin obviously was not getting the gains, the ROI, and everybody got really addicted to the 50Xs and the 100Xs and the whatever of altcoins. And they were thinking because Bitcoin was 10,000 or 20,000 that it didn't have the return, right? It didn't have the exponential gains potential. So, and that was just kind of, I feel like, forced down many people's throat. And of course, when you had people like JP Morgan and all these people over the years always shooting Bitcoin down and all this, and like, they never advocated for Bitcoin or anything like that. Not that they advocated for altcoins either, but it was never something that, was like, buy Bitcoin, make sure it's buy, you have a few maxis out there, of course, but the majority of people fell in love and got addicted to the altcoin casino. And it's a shame because I think that just ruined everybody's, bags essentially. And anybody that's held through all those, most times, like, just did not manage it at all on the way down and just were holding it through. And Bitcoin now has gotten to a place where it's priced people out. I think that Bitcoin is going to continue higher. Even if we get a pullback, pullbacks are going to be part of it. I think that we will probably see sub 100 again, 70, 80, 90, whatever it may be. But from there, as we go into these next few years, where I anticipate huge market collapse, and I mean huge, folks. Talking just huge. And I don't think there's even a way for many people to truly prepare for it at this point if you're not. And the only way to prepare for it in my eyes, and I could be wrong, is just to get out of debt, try to have some sort of an investment. But even that, I don't know what it's going to look like if the markets just tank. Yeah, so it's a big play here. And I just look around and I just feel like the powers that be just priced everybody out of Bitcoin, not tricked everybody, because it's, what I mean? Like, everybody just forgot about Bitcoin. And then now it's like, that was the play as far as long-term investing would have went. Like, had you just thrown X amount into Bitcoin in 2017, 2018, 2019, whatever, yeah, you would have had the ups and downs, but obviously it would have played out. To me, actually, I find Ethereum, even though everybody dogs on Ethereum, stating that, it's underperformed and everything like that, the biggest time frame when I got Ethereum was in the the Rona drop, and then in periods of 2018 and on this rise when Bitcoin was going back up to like 14K, Ethereum had just started staking, and you needed like 32 ETH to stake. So that was like a big goal of mine in this period, was to like try to have at least 32 Ethereum to do the staking. And then I doubled up on here, and then I made moves across the board. But anyways, Bitcoin is, this bull run, of course, so far from like 2022 to now is up 7x, of course. So yeah, it's technically outperformed ETH. However, if we go back to just 5 years ago, let's just go back to Rona. So 3,900, it was a 30x. So still great, amazing, right? Let's just take a look at ETH in the same time. And in that same time frame, March 20, we were at $88 at times. I didn't get the exact low, of course, but under $100 in that region. And then even here, you're still at a 52x return. It's just consolidated here, right? So to me, ETH has been the better play of the two, but only, again, timing is of a virtue, because if you're only coming into this market as of recently, then yeah, you got a 4x versus the 7 that Bitcoin put in. But to me, I'm looking at 50x returns where we're at, give or take. And it's just one of those things. I don't know how we just got on that tangent. I get tangenty on these live streams, folks. Sorry. I need my my schedule of stuff to talk about. But anyways, to answer that question on people, I think that we still have some upside on the alts. I know that sounds crazy. But to be fair, we have had multiple little bursts, right? So it's just individually looked at now. You have things like Zcash has popped 700%. You had XRP and HBAR and all these things last year. We've had Solana even go from 97 to over 200 just recently. Right. So, and the thing I guess I would compare it to at this point is similar to a stock market, right? Because the stock market is the same way right now. You have the major indices all at new all-time highs, but if you scroll through, 1,000 stocks, not everything is, and a lot of things are actually making new lows, right? So you still have the same setup there. It's just back in the day, there was only a few options and a lot of money coming in, so we had to throw a dart at anything and it went up as far as altcoins go. Nowadays, it's a slim pick. And to go on even further, I guess, I want to talk about how, it's not looking great right here for old Biddy. She might be going for the 113. ETH, again, another reason it's been one of my largest, I guess, bets, I guess you could say, is that we put in this massive bullish setup that just so happens to align with, again, like I'm looking at everything kind of topping off and finalizing around like 2027, 2028. And this huge pattern here, which truly only measures Ethereum. Although to me, I guess anytime in the past, when Ethereum does well, generally we see the altcoins move too. So I've always kind of anticipated that the altcoins in general would move. It's just not necessarily happening, right? So it's just something to be aware of there. But for ETH, at least, we've come up off of this low, hit one of the major areas, front run one of the targets here. I was looking to see if we get it. So still possible. But either way, even if we come down and cool off for a bit, right, the overall thesis is as we go into next year, and it doesn't mean like January 1, but into the next year here, I anticipate ETH to push through and going into potentially the end of next year even. So not that it starts in December, but something like maybe mid-year next year or March or something. Let's just say that the market cools off right now. We get a few months of pullback and whatever. That's the idea at hand, is that we push up through 2026 when everybody's expecting a huge bear market. This is for ETH, but I imagine that the altcoins would go with it, right? So to some degree, it might not be everything, but that's kind of what I'm looking at there. So, and again, more so to the idea, at least Ethereum outperforms Bitcoin in that realm. Tony. Who's Tony? We got tariffs getting threatened, restricting earth minerals, and that's why the whole market is dropping. Tony says, why is the market pulling back currently? Just noticed stocks dropping. Did I miss something? Somebody else said, it's WW3. All right. Let's take a look at the stocks while we're here. It is wild. This is by far the most blow off tops like scenarios or whatever you want to call it in all markets. I mean, in a long time. But yeah, getting a pullback here on the S&P. So the only thing I'll say about all this right now is that we're pulling back on a Friday. Again, taking out the news, taking out everything, right? What happens on a Friday? You pull back X%, there's negative news. And then what happens all weekend long is that news circulates like crazy. Gold's still chilling. And on a news perspective, you're going to have everybody wigging out into Monday, right? Because now you've had all weekend to just stew on whatever's going on and everything's going to get, nasty and blah, blah, blah. And then on a technical perspective, just like I was just looking at ETH, really anything, essentially we always get these moves where if you're finishing off a week or a month, but let's just put in an example for the week. If you're finishing off the week, usually with a huge downturn, almost always you're going to snap back Monday and Tuesday of the following week because and then of course the news is going to usually like get reversed or whatever the case is, right? Whatever just dropped with the tariffs, it's like, oh, they came to an agreement or something, drops on Monday, right? And the technical side of things, I look for those all the time, right? Just like this week when we were coming up on Bitcoin at all-time high and the setup was there. I just will say that I didn't take the short, unfortunately. It would have been almost $8,000 short, but I took a smaller one though. I did get a piece of it. I did get a piece, but the setup was there, right? We were at euphoria-ish across the board. We were at $126,000, and what did we do? We were pumping into the end of a week, and first of this week, what happened? You dump, right? So, and we do this back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and we do this on a small scale up to a large scale. And so, on a day like this where we're just completely dropping across the board, I have to say there's a likeliness that we reverse that on Monday to Tuesday. So just something to think about. We'll cover it again on Monday. We'll take a look at everything fresh. Silver still kind of just poking around. And this is actually a good example. I'm going to run through some stocks because just like altcoins, you got some things at all-time highs. This is new, Circle, but let's see. Palantir, new all-time highs. HIM's kind of chilling. Hood is obviously at new all-time highs. NVIDIA is obviously doing, oh, look at that. NVIDIA smacked the 195, just like that. But if we go down, Apple, all right, so far these are bad examples, but there's a few. Maybe none, Jesus. Alibaba, all right, everything's at all-time high so far on the top. CVS, let's see, all-time highs, okay. It's not at all-time highs. Let's zoom it out. It's not doing bad, though. Dollar General, God. DJT, it's an interesting one. Had a huge burst and it's flopping and groping. GE all-time highs. All right, I retract my statement. Maybe the entire stock market's at all-time highs. No, but it really isn't. Like not every single thing, just everything I'm clicking on. Yeah, no, it's truly not everything, but there is a lot. There's actually a lot more than I thought. I ran through this the other day and I had the notion that we were just kind of only seeing a few hit it, but there's some pretty good ones. Roku. Some Solar Edge thing. SMCI. Whoa. Why do I have those all the way up there? Oh, they must have 10 to 1. They must have did a split. Okay. I was like, it also was like $1,000 last time I looked. Got Tesla making the run for the harmonic here. All right, stock market's not looking too bad. Altcoins, on the other hand, are looking bad. Not funny. I feel for everybody with the altcoins, right? It's like that was my bread and butter for so long, even personally, up until really 2022. Honestly, like 2021, we were slinging pretty heavily, and then I still, like I said, I just luckily I was able to build enough size and everything through making big moves. Though I had to take some big risks, one of which was literally selling 75% of everything I've ever gotten into and had built up by then. I got out of everything last year. If you were trading with me, you definitely know it. You saw it. I got out of everything at the 74 at the $4,000 high on ETH last year, the first time. This one. Oh, look, the bat's still there actually. So this setup right here last year in 2024 was a big warning shot to me, and I was anticipating this to reach the targets, which was one at least back to this B point, and then I think it was the gold pocket of this as well. So that was the target area, so they were both aligning. And at the time, take yourself back to this window, right? This was March of 2024. Bitcoin had just broke all-time high from 69K from prior 2021 cycle. It was sitting at 72, 74, whatever. And ETH kind of showcased that we had potential for a drop to that level, right? So we were trading at $4,000, and that was a 50% pullback if we got it. So I ended up dumping 75% of everything, which was a lot of ETH, more so than anything. Really only 25% I held left was just ETH. I dumped all the altcoins I had and everything like that, except for another one, Near Protocol and Litecoin. So I guess I didn't dump every single one, but 25% of the whole portfolio was left. And I risked, this coming back to the target. And it took 6 months. And you're talking throughout a lot of the most bullish news you could ever get. This was before the election. This was just ETF frenzy. This was even here. I think even ETH got an ETF approval or something like that. I remember this day. It was May something. It was like Labor Day. I was on the beach with my wife, and I ended up selling out of everything here. And I didn't even take a short or anything until we got to here. So waited all throughout this. Everything pops back up. I ended up shorting this. And if I looked into this, I know exactly what happened. We had previous week high, so that we ended the week on a high. The next week we took it out for the low, but overall I was targeting lower. So I ended up getting in this. This was a 10x. I made 10x of the short position. On top of that, I sold everything here, bought it all back here for the ETH position. So that was a 50% haircut, doubled up my bag, was able to 10x, smaller position. Of course, I got like X amount that I was able to add into Ethereum there as well. And then, overall, obviously we came down a little bit lower over time, which was another 30%. I didn't manage to, sell out of everything and do it this time. I just ended up picking up new Ethereum, anything we were under 2,000 during that point. The crazy part about this setup, though, was that this was, again, huge multi-year harmonic setup, just like we have on ETH BTC. This is a bearish one. I showcased the target. The B point is the most modest one. Like, you don't want to go crazy, always targeting the most aggressive one, but the most aggressive target is back to C. All right. And time-wise, generally speaking, when you have something along this line, you look for half of the time it took to make this setup for us to play out. So this took 2 years, so 2022 to 2024. And with this being the most aggressive target, 1 year later, which was half the time of that pattern, we came right to it. And that's another reason why I was so bullish when we came down to here back in April, on top of the, just everything else. April lows, the tariff war fears were crazy. Bitcoin had a potential setup. And then ETH actually put in a new setup down here, but it was an interesting one. She's not looking good, folks. She's not looking good. Yeah, I really need to get back above 119.5, but so far closing below. Going to require a sip of some pumpkin spice. Will altcoin and small caps go parabolic? It's the popular opinion to say no. But yeah, I still foresee, it just depends when, looking at that ETH BTC chart, I think we still have a lot of, we could be getting a pullback here. Don't think about it, or don't think it can't happen, I guess. But overall, the ETH BTC pair to me is the most telling. However, unfortunately, that's only measuring ETH, right? So when I'm looking at Ethereum to potentially cool off against Bitcoin and then outperform Bitcoin into 2026, are the altcoins going to follow? Like it's the question at hand, right? So that's just the hard part that we have to kind of wait and see. We're definitely at risks here. But yeah. Crazy story on ETH. Yeah, that was a wild one. And like I said, it's I've only done something like that twice, and because it's hard, man. Even for like, you never know. Obviously, like, that's the number one thing. I looking back, it looks like, okay, that was clear as day, so easy. It's hard to live through those things, right? Just like right now, we're living through this drop. Where's it gonna turn around on us? We come back to this in a week and it's like, oh, we're down at 113 and cool. The monthly pivots there, that's made sense. Living through it though, it's like, all right, we're trying to see if we're going to get this move here. It's also, again, the context is key around all these things. And then these are small moves right now, and these things are what lead into the bigger moves, of course. And the context is just the big one for me. So again, it's Friday. It's now noon, which is not too late. But technically, if you're in the eyes of a day trader, the true blue volume that comes in for Forex trading, technically, like you always get the Asia session, London session, New York session, so on and so on. Like they all obviously overlap a little bit in terms of what time they're open. But realistically, the volume for the day, the trading for the day, the real players are pretty much done by 2 p.m. Eastern most days. Again, not perfect, but so for me, I don't really love to see things happening after 2. I feel like a lot of those things get undone when we reopen on the next day. On top of that, it's Friday. It's Bitcoin used to not necessarily run off of that, but now we do, and especially with all the ETFs, everything like that. It's hard to see moves like this on a Friday, but I'm still, if we flip, I mean, I'm in a position no matter what. I took the long. It is what it is. If I get stopped out, yeah, just look for the next position at that point. And that's the key here too, is that once again, I'm not emotional here. I'm not worried. I'm not sweating it. I know that living below 19,500 is not great. So the longer we're down here, the longer is likely we're going to go to 113. That's just, I got all these other little speed bumps and all, but 113 would be the most likely. So that can change if we start to flip this as we maybe close out today, go into the weekend. I love to see when there is a negative news catalyst coming out right now, right? Because now we got this quick drop and we are below a key region. So what happens here? People aggressively enter shorts it's like a breakout trader, right? Because looking at this inverse is just like when you're breaking the all-time high, breakout traders come in, thinking we're going to, moonshot. You got this whole move already, and it's not a huge move. It could very well go lower, but 6% move so far. Entering at the lows is never a great idea, obviously, but people will come in to this region aggressively because of the news and think about that. So it's just things that all kind of add up to it. But aside from it, it's super simple to me. So far, this was our key level. After that, it's 113. We'll see how things shape up as we go into the next week. And then again, just take a look at this as we walk into next week. Right, some key areas here. We've got a weekly pivot that's most likely going to, well, again, depends on where we close. We got 2 more days, but our average for the week is coming in at 121. So it's likely we come back to that next week, depending on if we don't just nuke from here. And currently, again, this is still being built for the next 2 days, point of control for the week and our weekly, everything's above us right now. So again, that's what I look for all the time. If we have a week of down, everything generates above you, and mean reversion, right? The price action snaps back to it. So that's what I'll be looking for next week. And if you'd like to catch these updates with us live, I generally put the everything I'm looking at and more inside the Data Pro Discord. You can find that over at data-pro.com. We've been on here for a hot minute this morning, so always fun, I guess, in the times when things are happening here. If I didn't get to your questions, sorry, I didn't ignore them by any means. There's just a couple on here, and again, we were just going through a bunch of different scenarios. I'll do this again next Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern. And then, of course, you can catch the daily videos Monday through Thursday at 11 a.m. as well. Hope you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Hope you all enjoy your weekend. Again, for the weekend, let's see if we get back above this 119,550. That's the key level here. If we start living above 119,550, I think we have a nice move to the upside on our hands here. And with that, folks, till the next video, I'll see you then. Cheers.